168 children. That is not a number from a war movie. That is not a headline from a foreign government's propaganda channel. That is the documented death toll confirmed by CNN, Reuters, the New York Times, the Associated Press, and a preliminary United States military investigation from a single Tomahawk cruise missile that struck the Shajara Taybe Girls Elementary School in Minab, Iran, on the morning of February 28, 2026. Size. The day Operation Epic Fury began, the day the school was in session, the girls were between 7 and 12 years old. I have been going through the documents since the first reports broke: the CNN investigation, the Reuters exclusive, the Washington Post's bombshell about the AI targeting system, the New York Times preliminary inquiry report, the UN Human Rights Office statement, the UNESCO declaration, the Senate letter signed by 45 senators demanding answers from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Pause. Here is what I found. The mainstream coverage is giving you the headline. Nobody is putting the documents together in one place and showing you the full picture. What the documents show when you read them page by page is worse than any single headline has suggested. It is not just a tragic mistake. It is a story about an AI targeting system that flagged a girls' school as a military installation. A president who went on camera and blamed Iran for a strike his own military was already investigating as their own. A defense secretary who testified before Congress and appeared to not know the preliminary findings his own department had already produced. And 175 families, because the number keeps rising, who buried children this week that the United States government has still not formally acknowledged killing. Let me show you exactly what the documents say, because you deserve to read the actual evidence, not just the official statements, before we go deeper into the documents, the timeline, what the AI targeting system actually did, what Trump said versus what his own military investigators found, and why 45 U.S. senators are now demanding answers that the Pentagon has still not given. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. This story is developing by the hour, and every day brings new documents, new testimony, and new details that the administration has still not addressed. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. You'll want to be here when the next filing drops. Now, let me show you exactly what happened. Quick context. Operation Epic Fury began on February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities, missile infrastructure, and military command centers. Within the first hours of the operation, a Tomahawk cruise missile struck the city of Minab in Iran's Hormuz province, a coastal city in southern Iran near the Strait of Hormuz. Adjacent to a naval base in Minab sits the Shajara Taybe Girls Primary School. Iran operates a 6-day school week. Saturday, February 28th, was a school day. The girls were in class when the missile hit. Timeline fast version. February 28th, approximately 7:22 a.m. local time. A Tomahawk cruise missile strikes Minab. Iranian state media immediately reports that a girls' school has been destroyed. Initial death toll reported as 120. Iranian officials blame the United States directly. February 28th, hours later, President Trump, speaking to reporters, says, and I'm quoting him directly, "We think it was done by Iran because they're very inaccurate with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran." He cited no evidence March 1st. The Pentagon declines to comment, citing an ongoing investigation. March 3rd, Iran's death toll rises. Iranian officials now report at least 168 children and 14 adults dead, with many more injured. March 5th, the New York Times publishes its first analysis, suggesting the school was struck as part of a U.S. attack on the adjacent Iranian naval base. March 6th, Reuters publishes an exclusive. U.S. investigation points to likely U.S. responsibility in the Iran school strike. March 6th, CNN publishes analysis suggests U.S. was responsible for deadly strike on Iranian elementary school. March 9th, CNN publishes new video footage showing a U.S. Tomahawk missile striking the naval base directly adjacent to the school seconds before the school collapsed. March 11th, Washington Post publishes its bombshell. The school was on the United States military's AI-generated target list and may have been mistakenly flagged as a military facility. The same day, the New York Times publishes the preliminary inquiry results. U.S. at fault. Outdated targeting data. A targeting error. March 12th, 45. United States senators sign a letter demanding answers from Pete Hegseth. March 12th. The UN Human Rights Office releases a formal condemnation. That is the setup. Now, the documents. Okay. The evidence. I want to start with the Washington Post investigation published March 11th because it contains the detail that changes this entire story, and most coverage buried it in paragraph 14. The Post reports, and I am quoting directly, the school building was on the American list of targets and could have been mistaken for a military facility. Sensitive. The article goes on to explain the mechanism. The United States military in Operation Epic Fury used an AI targeting system, specifically the combination of Claude, the AI model from Anthropic, integrated with Palantir's Maven smart system for real-time targeting and target identification during the opening hours of strikes on Iran. That is not my characterization. That is the CT citing multiple defense technology sources confirmed in reporting from multiple outlets. But here is what got me. The Washington Post goes further. The article states that the school building was on the U.S. target list and that investigators believe the AI system may have mistaken the school for the adjacent naval base facility. Page by page, the reporting points to a targeting error embedded in the AI system itself. A system that was used according to defense sources specifically because of the speed required in the opening hours of the operation. Put those together, an AI system generates a target list. The target list includes a girls' school, either because the school was misidentified as part of the naval base or because the database the AI was trained on contained outdated information about the facility. A Tomahawk missile is launched at the target. 168 children die. Now, page 2 of the CNN investigation from March 11th. Quoting directly, the U.S. military accidentally struck an Iranian elementary school in an attack that state media said killed at least 168 children and 14 adults. The strike was due to outdated intelligence. According to sources briefed on the initial findings, CNN obtained its findings from sources briefed on a preliminary U.S. military inquiry. NBC News the same day, outdated intelligence likely led to a deadly U.S. strike on an Iranian elementary school. The Associated Press confirmed outdated intelligence likely led to the United States carrying out a deadly missile strike on an elementary school in Iran. I went through all of these reports 3 times each. The pattern is unmistakable. Every major American news organization, CNN, NBC, AP, Reuters, NYT, Washington Post, has independently arrived at the same conclusion from independent sourcing. The United States fired the missile. The U.S. military's own investigation confirms it. The evidence is in the video footage, the satellite imagery, the target list, and the preliminary inquiry. Now, what nobody is covering at the scale this deserves. The United Nations Human Rights Office released a formal statement. I pulled the full text from OCD. Quoting directly, UN experts today expressed profound shock and grief after a girls' primary school in Minab in Iran's Hormuz province was struck. Schools are civilian objects and children are expressly protected under international humanitarian law. This attack must be independently investigated. That statement uses the phrase expressly protected under international humanitarian law. That is legal language. That is the UN formally stating that whatever happened in Minab violated the laws of war. UNESCO released a separate statement calling the bombing a grave violation of humanitarian law and demanding accountability. The UN General Assembly issued a statement. 32 countries formally condemned the strike at the UN Human Rights Council. The International Committee of the Red Cross called for an independent investigation. Read those again. This is not one organization reacting. This is the entire international legal and humanitarian architecture responding in unison to a single event. And the United States government's response as of today has been an ongoing investigation. No formal admission of responsibility, no public apology, and a president who initially blamed the victim's country for killing its own children. Okay? But look, I have to be fair here. The other side has a point. Several points. Actually, the Trump administration's defenders argue this was a genuine military mistake, not a war crime. The school was adjacent to an active Iranian military naval base. That base was a legitimate military target. The U.S. was not deliberately targeting children. Targeting errors occur in every conflict in history. Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican, told reporters he wants to see the final investigation results before drawing conclusions, but said, quote, "If the U.S. is responsible, the United States must admit it." That is actually a reasonable position. Second, the death toll remains disputed. Iranian state media initially reported 120 dead, then 168, then 175. The Iranian government has a documented history of inflating casualty numbers for propaganda purposes during conflict. No independent verification team has reached the site. The actual number could be lower. Third, the war itself, the administration argues, was launched specifically to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons that could kill millions. The moral calculus of civilian deaths in a war versus the potential deaths from a nuclear-armed Iran is a legitimate strategic argument that serious thinkers make in good faith. Former Trump national security official Fred Flea put it this way on Fox News: "This is a tragedy, but tragedies happen in war. The question is intent, and there was no intent to target children. Don't dismiss that. It is not nothing. Intent matters enormously in international law. But here is what even the most sympathetic analysis of the administration cannot explain away. 4 things. First, Trump went on camera and blamed Iran. Not we are investigating, not we need more information. He said it was done by Iran. While his own military investigators had already begun a probe that they suspected pointed to American responsibility, he blamed the victim's country on camera to reporters before his own people had completed their inquiry. Second, Pete Hegseth appeared before the Senate and gave answers that senators described as evasive and incomplete about an investigation his own department was conducting. Third, the school was on the United States AI-generated target list. That is not a human error in the conventional sense. That is a systemic failure in the technology being used to identify targets. Fourth, as of today, there has been no formal statement of responsibility, no apology. The UN, UNESCO, the Red Cross, and 32 nations have all called for accountability. The United States has issued 0 formal acknowledgement. What I can tell you is what the documents show. And the documents show a Tomahawk cruise missile fired by U.S. forces hitting a facility that was on a U.S.-generated target list adjacent to and apparently confused with an Iranian naval base, killing a minimum of 168 children between the ages of 7 and 12 on a Saturday morning when they were in school. This did not come out of nowhere. Backstory quick: the U.S. military's integration of AI targeting systems is not new. The Palantir Maven Smart System, Maven, has been in development since 2017. It was originally contracted by Google, who pulled out under employee pressure in 2018. Palantir subsequently became the primary contractor. Maven is described as using machine learning to identify military targets from satellite imagery and sensor data. It was used extensively in the Middle East before Operation Epic Fury. The concern about AI targeting errors is also not new. In 2022, human rights organizations published studies documenting AI targeting failures in military contexts. In 2023, a leaked internal document from a defense contractor warned that AI target identification systems carry what the document called acceptable error rates, meaning the system designers built in a tolerance for false identifications. According to one expert quoted in the Common Dreams investigation, Israel's AI targeting system in Gaza had a 10% error rate that was, quote, accepted. Now those same systems are being applied to a country with 40 times Gaza's population and a school system that operates on Saturdays. Someone once said on record that you cannot outsource the decision to kill to a machine and then claim you didn't decide. That was an AI ethics researcher testifying before Congress in 2024. Nobody listened. What happened? Congress held a hearing. Nothing changed. Defense contractors continued to deploy these systems. Operation Epic Fury began. On the first day, a Tomahawk struck Minab. Pattern technology deployed. Warning ignored. Tragedy occurs. Investigation begins. No accountability every time. And the families in Minab are the latest to live the consequence of that pattern. See where this is going? If this breakdown is useful to you, hit the like button right now. What I'm doing here is reading the actual UN filings, the actual CNN investigation, the actual Washington Post documents about the AI targeting system, and the actual Senate correspondence so you don't have to. Your like tells the algorithm this level of analysis matters. It takes 2 seconds. It makes a real difference for this channel. Saturday, March 1st, 2026. Here is exactly what happened. This is the day the story broke into mainstream awareness, and it is a day that reveals how badly the administration mishandled the public response from the very beginning. At approximately 11:30 a.m. Eastern, Iranian state media publishes the first photographs from Minab. The images show a collapsed school building, children's backpacks in the rubble, Iranian rescue workers pulling bodies from the debris. The photographs spread across every major international news organization within minutes. By noon Eastern, the images are on the front pages of newspapers in 30 countries. Iran's foreign minister holds an emergency press conference calling it a massacre and demanding international condemnation. Then at approximately 1:45 p.m. Eastern, while his own military was already launching a preliminary inquiry into whether a U.S. missile caused the destruction, President Trump told reporters, quote, "We think it was done by Iran because they're very inaccurate with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran." He offered no evidence. He had no classified briefing that pointed to Iran. His own military was already investigating because the evidence was pointing toward U.S. responsibility, not Iranian. He simply said it and moved on. Within hours, CBS News confirmed that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had been briefed on the incident and was aware it was under investigation. The White House nonetheless declined to correct the president's statement. No official retraction was issued that day or the next or for 5 days until Reuters published its exclusive on March 6th, confirming the investigation pointed to U.S. responsibility. Now, what everyone missed, while the focus was on Trump's initial statement, something else was happening behind the scenes. According to the Washington Post investigation, the school had been placed on the U.S. target list, not by a human military planner reviewing maps and ground intelligence, but by an AI-assisted targeting system that processed satellite imagery and database records. The Post reports that the school may have been mistaken as a military site, language that describes not a human error, but a systemic classification failure in the automated process. Translation, the algorithm said, "This is a target. A human approved it. A missile was launched." And then 168 children died because the algorithm was wrong, and because the database it was working from contained outdated information about what was at that location. Here is the detail that changes the entire accountability picture. The CT Post reports that the military was leaning into AI for the attack on Iran, specifically because of the speed required in the opening hours of Operation Epic Fury. The targeting decisions had to be made faster than traditional human-reviewed processes allow. AI was chosen for speed, and speed cost 168 children their lives. Don't go anywhere. What I show you next completely changes the political picture. Drop your prediction in the comments right now. Will Pete Hegseth resign over this? Will Trump formally acknowledge U.S. responsibility? See if you're right after the expert section. What are experts actually saying? Vox published one of the most comprehensive analyses. Their report describes the strike as a U.S. atrocity in Iran. Direct quote. At least 175 people, primarily children under the age of 12, were killed by the strike early Saturday. Because of Iran's 6-day work week, which includes Saturdays, girls were in class when the school was hit. Vox is not a fringe outlet. They are citing confirmed casualty figures and confirmed timeline data. The Intercept published a Pentagon report summary with this headline. A U.S. military targeting error triggered the killing of at least 175 at a school in Iran, the highest civilian death toll in Trump's war. That phrase, the highest civilian death toll in Trump's war, is going to matter enormously in the weeks ahead, both politically and legally. Senator Ron Wyden and Senator Jeff Merkley issued a joint statement. I pulled the full text from Merkley's official Senate website, quoting directly, "The results of this school attack are horrific. The majority of those killed in the strikes were girls between the ages of 7 and 12 years old. Massive civilian casualty incidents like the attack in Minab are not only detrimental to the Iranian people who have suffered enough, but they are also detrimental to U.S. national security interests. That language is significant. It is not just moral outrage. It is a strategic argument that this event damages America's position in the world." Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York went further during a Senate hearing. She asked the U.S. European Command Commander directly, "Can you guess how we could have gotten this wrong in Iran?" and targeted a children's school. The general's response captured on C-SPAN was measured, but did not deny the fundamental premise of the question. Mary Ellen O'Connell, international law expert at Notre Dame Law School, told The Guardian, "A strike that kills 168 civilian children is on its face an event that demands immediate investigation under international humanitarian law. The distinction between civilian and military objects is a cornerstone of the laws of war. If the U.S. targeting system failed to make that distinction, that failure must be examined transparently." Bill Van Efeld of Human Rights Watch published this on social media, which was widely shared. The school was a protected civilian object. The fact that it was placed on a target list by an AI system does not excuse the strike. It makes the accountability question more complex, not less pressing. Key point: AI does not absorb legal responsibility. The humans who deployed the AI and approved the targets remain legally accountable. Former Defense Department official Lawrence Kororb, who served under Ronald Reagan, was asked by NBC, "Should there be accountability?" He said, "Absolutely. You cannot use a tragic mistake as a shield from accountability. If the targeting system failed, the system must be reformed. And the responsible officials must answer for what went wrong." Here is the expert point that is being discussed the least in mainstream coverage. The Common Dreams investigation cites a defense expert who notes that Israel's AI targeting system, the same technology family now being integrated with U.S. operations, had a documented 10% error rate in Gaza. The expert says Israel built AI targeting systems in Gaza. Approved kills in 20 seconds. 10% error rate accepted. Now those same systems are being used against Iran. 10% error rate accepted. If that error rate is applied to the number of targets struck on February 28th alone, the question of how many other civilian casualties were produced by the same system on the same day becomes impossible to avoid. If this analysis is useful, hit like. These breakdowns take hours of document review to put together. The like button is what tells the platform this kind of journalism matters over the headline version. Takes 2 seconds. Helps the channel reach more people who actually want to understand what happened. Why should you care? Real talk. How this affects actual people. I want to be direct with you here. Because this story is not just about Iran and not just about the children who died in Minab. This story is about the system your country is using to decide who dies in war. The AI targeting system that flagged the Shajara Tay Girls Elementary School as a potential military target. The same system that caused a Tomahawk cruise missile to kill 168 children on a Saturday morning is not a foreign system. It is an American system built by American companies, funded by American taxpayer dollars, approved by American military commanders, and it made a catastrophic error that killed 168 children. Your money funded this. Your money. American taxpayers fund the entire military-industrial apparatus, including Palantir, which built the Maven system through defense contracts. The DoD's annual AI and autonomous systems budget has grown to over $2 billion. That is your money being spent on systems that, according to this event, are being deployed faster than they are being verified to be accurate. The precedent this sets is enormous. If an AI targeting system can flag a girls' school as a military target, and that error can be explained away as outdated intelligence with no individual accountability, no official acknowledgement, and no formal apology, then every future AI-assisted strike that kills civilians has a template for how to handle the aftermath. Investigate, use passive language, avoid formal admission, move on. If that template holds, you should be deeply concerned. Not because you will be bombed, but because the moral authority that the United States uses to lead alliances, pressure adversaries, and claim the high ground in every conflict is eroded every time events like Minab go unrest. When America's credibility as a nation that cares about civilian life is damaged, every American overseas, every American diplomat, every American soldier serving alongside international partners is affected. The international community is watching. 32 nations have condemned the strike. The UN Human Rights Office, UNESCO, the International Red Cross, all of them have issued formal statements. American allies in Europe are watching how Washington responds. If the response is silence, that silence speaks loudly. Who is affected right now? The 168 families in Minab whose daughters went to school on Saturday morning and did not come home. The 45 U.S. senators who signed a letter demanding answers and have not received a direct response from Pete Hegseth. The U.S. military's own investigators who produced a preliminary finding that their commander-in-chief publicly contradicted career intelligence professionals, who are now being asked to explain how an AI systems targeting database contained information so outdated that it classified an active girls' school as a potential military facility. And every American watching this story develop, wondering whether the government will tell the truth about what happened. How did the Trump administration respond, and why the response made it worse? Let me give you the full timeline, because the response itself is now a second story within the story. February 28th, approximately 1:45 p.m. Eastern, Trump tells reporters Iran did it. No evidence, no caveat. No, we are investigating. Iran did it. March 1st, Pentagon declines to comment, citing ongoing investigation. No contradiction of the president's statement. March 3rd, Trump is asked again about the school. He says, and I am quoting from KX reporting, Trump says he doesn't know about military investigation that U.S. struck Iranian girls' school. The President of the United States told reporters he was unaware of an investigation being conducted by his own military. Either he genuinely did not know, in which case his defense secretary had not briefed him on the most controversial civilian casualty event of the war, or he did know and said he didn't. Both possibilities are alarming. March 6th, Reuters publishes its exclusive U.S. investigation points to likely U.S. responsibility. The White House still does not issue a formal correction of the president's February 28th statement attributing the strike to Iran. March 9th, CNN publishes video evidence. A Tomahawk missile, a U.S. weapon, is visible in footage striking the naval base adjacent to the school seconds before the school's collapse is recorded. The White House continues to decline comment. March 11th, Washington Post publishes the AI targeting system report. CNN and AP publish the outdated intelligence finding. New York Times publishes the preliminary inquiry conclusion, U.S. at fault. Pentagon response. The investigation is ongoing and we will not comment further. The same day, 45 senators send a letter to Pete Hegseth. The letter specifically states that the majority of those killed were girls between the ages of 7 and 12. The letter demands a swift investigation and accountability. As of today, Senator Hegseth has not responded publicly to the substance of that letter. March 12th, Trump is asked directly whether he accepts that the U.S. was responsible. His statement reported by KXN. He struggles when pressed on his earlier claim. CBS News describes it as Trump's rhetoric taking an incoherent turn. That is 13 days of official silence, deflection, and a presidential statement that was contradicted by his own military investigators before he even finished saying it. Here is what is notable about the silence. Iran has called it a massacre. The UN has called it a grave violation of international humanitarian law. UNESCO has called it a grave violation of humanitarian law. 22 European countries have called for an independent investigation, and the United States government has not yet issued a single sentence that begins with the words, "We are responsible." Not yet. That silence is now becoming part of the international story of this war. Not just the strike, the response to the strike. What is still unclear, 1. The exact mechanism of the AI targeting error. The Washington Post reports the school may have been mistaken as a military site. The CNN report says outdated intelligence. These are not mutually exclusive. An AI system trained on outdated database records could misclassify a civilian facility, but the specific failure point has not been officially confirmed. 2. Who approved the target? The Tomahawk was fired by a human being who received an approved target list. The target was on the list. Who reviewed the list? Who authorized the strike? Those names are not public.